I've been teaching both yin yoga and restorative yoga for a while. And one of the questions I get asked most by students, sometimes by newer teachers, even by long-term practitioners is, what's the difference between yin yoga and restorative yoga? And it's a fair question. On the surface, I think they look almost identical. There's long holds, lots of props, a quiet room, nobody's moving very fast. If you walked by a studio and looked through the window, I think you might not be able to tell them apart. You wouldn't know which class is happening. But they're doing really different things in the body, and understanding some of those differences can change how we approach each practice, how we sequence the practice, and how we talk about these two different styles with students and just with people who are curious about it. So let's start today with what they share, because there's a lot of overlap between the two. Then we can pull them apart and look a little bit more about what makes each one distinct. Okay, so let's start with the obvious. Both yin and restorative yoga use really long holds, right? Several minutes in a single shape, sometimes even longer, right? I've been to and taught restorative practices that stayed in poses for 10 plus minutes. Both also use props really generously: bolsters, blankets, blocks, straps. The intention in both practices is to support the body so that the muscles don't have to work. We're looking for that release of muscle energy versus muscle activity. Okay, both are also practiced at a much slower pace. The nervous system gets a chance to settle, the breath deepens. There's an invitation to just sit in that quiet space for longer, which I think challenges both the body and the mind. And both practices tend to attract students who are looking for something quieter, something nourishing, and a way to practice stillness. So yeah, they share a lot and have a lot of the same overarching themes, which is exactly why there can be some confusion about the two. So let's look at how they're different. I worked with a teacher years ago, and she had the best analogy, and it stuck with me ever since. I think it's like the clearest way I found to explain the difference between the two, especially since I have a background in practice massage therapy, so it's kind of a natural sequence. Restorative yoga is like a Swedish massage, right? Like a spa massage. It's gentle, it's soft, the pressure's light, and the pace is slow. The whole intention of it is to signal safety to the nervous system. You leave, you feel nourished, rested, renewed. But yin yoga is a little bit more like a deep tissue massage. It feels good, but it can be a little bit edgy. It takes you somewhere different. There's definitely more sensation. The work goes into a whole different layer, and you might even feel it really differently the next day. So same general category, really different experience, really different intention. And that analogy has just stayed with me over the years because I think it captures something that's hard to put into words otherwise. Both practices are so valuable. They're just doing something really different in the body. So let's look a little deeper at restorative yoga first. It is at its core a practice for the nervous system. The whole architecture of a restorative class, the props, the long holds, the supported shapes, the stillness, is designed to bring the body and the mind into that state of rest. In restorative yoga, we're not looking for sensation. And I think that's a really important distinction. right? Because if a student feels a strong stretch in a restorative pose, I might invite them to adjust something, more support, a different position or variation on the position, change where a prop is, so that the body really feels held and it's not having to work at all. The intention is like complete ease. The muscles release because they don't have to do anything. And the nervous system then reads that as safety. And it can begin to down regulate a little bit more. The heart rate drops, the breath slows and lengthens, and the body's making that shift a little bit more towards rest and recovery. It's part of why I think that restorative is really valuable for people who are depleted, stressed, recovering from illness, or just running a little bit more on empty. It's not passive in that way of like we're doing nothing. I mean, we kind of are, but it's just creating the conditions in the body for it to have time to restore itself. Okay, yin. Yin yoga shares those long holds and lots of props, but the intention's really different. In yin, we are working with and towards sensation, mild to moderate sensation, but held over a long period of time. So it invites the tissue to soften instead of resist. Like that is the practice, learning to meet the sensation with ease instead of holding and tensing against it. And the target's a little different here too. While in restorative, we're really primarily working with the nervous system. It doesn't mean we're not in yin, but yin is also working with the connective tissue, fascia, ligaments, joints, those tissues that benefit from a different kind of work than we do in an active class. They respond better to that gentle, sustained loading of pressure over time. And this is why the holds in yin are longer, right? Connective tissue has a really different quality than muscle tissue. It's less elastic, less malleable. So it needs that slow pressure to respond. Right? So yin is still a slow, quiet, internally focused practice. It's great for the nervous system, but there's this purposeful quality to the sensation. We're using it as information and a way to practice softening in response to that sensation, while still asking the body and the mind to find that stillness. Okay, so what does this mean practically for how we sequence, how we cue, and just how we talk about these practices with students? I think one, language matters differently in each practice. In restorative, the language we use invites release and ease. Let the props do the work. There's nothing that you need to do. Letting the students know that any sensation is more a signal to add support, not to have to stay and breathe with it. But that in yin, sensation is part of the practice, but we can still fine-tune how we talk about it, right? Explore the edge, but see if you can soften around it. Right? Soften into the sensation rather than guarding against it. We're not having to chase intensity in yin, we're just working with what's already there. Two, prop use looks similar, but function a little differently between the two. In restorative, props are there to eliminate effort altogether. You can just do nothing. In yin, props are there to make the hold more sustainable, not to remove all sensation, but to find a place where you can stay several minutes without strain. It supports the opening that's happening. And I think it's really helpful for students to have this bigger concept, like the whole context around it. So when you're teaching a yin or restorative class, telling the students what to expect, what the practice is actually doing, can really change their experience. A student that understands that restorative is for the nervous system might stop wondering why they're not getting a stretch. And a student who understands that yin works with sensation might stop trying to eliminate that sensation. Right? So the expectation sets up that benefit for the practice. Right? Each style has so much value. I think we can think about them as complementary rather than interchangeable. The Swedish massage, the deep tissue massage. Both have a really valuable place, support the bodies in different ways. So I hope this is helpful in just getting into some of that nuance between the two. If you're curious to go deeper into either of these practices, that's exactly what this whole series is about. We'll see you in the next one.